Welcome, guys, to another edition of Crocos Corner and Squad Nero. It'll be featured on both for anybody out there that is interested in these reviews that we do. For people who are a part of Crocos Corner, I wanted to make sure that you guys could also be exposed to some of the anime, manga, comic book-esque reviews and content that I do. So we do make sure that these videos such as this come out on both platforms. For anybody that is looking for my other cast members' reviews, please specifically tune into Squad Nero Podcast, as that is where the majority of their reviews will be. So if you want to see things like reviews on certain mangas or certain television shows that are out and currently kind of within that nerdy pop culture-esque feel, then please, for the bulk of everything, check out Squad Nero Podcast. With that being said, what I wanted to do with you guys today is I wanted to just simply have a conversation on the finale of My Hero Academia. This was something that I wasn't looking at doing any form of a review on. When I first saw the manga, I personally did not have enough enjoyment from the conclusion as I got that to think that I would even be at a point today where I would be doing a review for My Hero Academia as a whole. I didn't think that the anime could have any weight to it that might make me look at things a little bit differently. And like a lot of things this year, I've really been proven wrong. My Hero Academia has just finally finished up its season finale in the anime, and there's several things that I would like to talk to you guys about, and specifically kind of go through the contrast between the manga's handling of the finale and the anime's handling of the finale. Before I go any further, I do want to ask you guys to like, follow, and subscribe if you like content like this, and please don't forget to hit that noti bell. Just kind of to dive right into it. The manga and the anime had two completely ways that they actually went the final season of My Hero Academia. At least this is something that's been extremely noticeable for me. So I want to kind of start with going back, and now we're talking about going back over a year and looking at exactly what were the ways that the manga gave us this material. And the the biggest thing is that it was the chapters for the finale, this season that we just currently got, was broken up into maybe half a dozen to 10 chapters. I could be wrong at exactly the exact number of that. But I don't think that I am. I think it was closer to like somewhere between half a dozen and a dozen chapters. And that is where I think they actually ran into the problem that turned a lot of people off, not just myself, but a lot of people off in regards to how the ending felt, more or less. When the idea of how mangas present content is very fast and loose, it is not really. There's structure to it. I don't want to misspeak. There is structure to it, but it varies upon each mangaka. So, for the people out there who are listening to this part and are manga readers, you probably have some idea of what I'm talking about. Please carry on listening if need be. But I just want to educate the anime only fans out there with some of the processes that happen with mangas. So, if we use as an example one shots or premieres within mangas, and this is what's going to be hosted through like Shonen Jump, that will appear on different applications like Manga, what is it, Manga Plus, or this Shonen Jump reader, as an example. When you get to those types of openings, you can have an opening that is, let's say, 24 pages. That is generally, words getting jumbled there. That is generally not the case. Generally, that opening chapter is like 60, 70 chapters, or excuse me, pages. And then with the chapter that will follow after that, that's where it will kind of be at that normal, like between 24, 27, 21, 27 pages per chapter. And it'll kind of carry on all the way through. that, but again, that doesn't have it doesn't have to happen that way. That's why I say it's fast and loose, because you can get instances where a opening is very short. It may be the same um as the regular opening. It doesn't have to symbolize anything else. It doesn't have to symbolize that it is an opening, or it is something larger than just any other chapter. This is just a chapter that starts it. So you can get it that way, but you don't typically get it that way. You typically do get kind of like a grandiose opening in regards to the chapter. And that's perfectly fine. Like I have no issue with that. I think that that is a great way to open it. But my problem is that it felt like something like that needed to be the case with My Hero Academia's ending. I think if they would have had one large chapter, which again, a lot of people may say, okay, well, that isn't typically how they do that, but it has been done like that before. I can't think of any particular examples, but I do think that JJK is an example, possible example. I won't say for sure because I can't exactly remember how many pages that chapter had, but JJK is an example I think had longer. Let's just phrase it like this: it had a longer chapter than its average chapter would be for its finale. And though I didn't like JJK's ending as much as I didn't like My Hero Academia's ending, I do think that it was a lot cleaner in the idea of them not necessarily worrying about how much can they fit information wise into a standard chapter, and just figured out how could they flesh out the story that they wanted to flesh out at the end. I think this was the biggest thing that hurt the My Hero Academia finale on the manga side. And where this is kind of corrected on the anime side is that with the anime, you now get an opportunity to see multiple of those chapters where they were just kind of like one, two, three. And it was like you get this one conclusion, and it's like, wait, what? Then you get this other part added to it the week after. And it's like after you get through about like two or three chapters like that, you just kind of are over it, especially if it was something where the initial chapter that kind of closed the large climactic moment out was one that was very lackluster to you, or one that you just personally did not enjoy, then now having to get those subsequent chapters that explain those things a little bit further that maybe you would feel better about if you had have gotten it all in one dose, you now are kind of jaded towards. With the anime, you don't have to go through this problem. You don't have to go through this process. You get multiple of those chapters now condensed into one episode. So I think that is what ended up getting the message more so across for me than necessarily the manga did in the anime, and that made me very pleased because I did enjoy My Hero Academia throughout the various seasons and throughout reading it. It is something that I thought was kind of a powerhouse of the modern generation. To take animation or excuse me, to take anime and manga and be able to put them in this world that is of superheroes, something that we traditionally see from comic books, and to tell a unique story from it, one that didn't feel like it was stepping on the toes of any comic books, was really cool. I think that it was a great idea. I love everything that came in regard. I think that it was it wasn't necessarily unique because I mean, we see superheroes all the time, and I wouldn't go, I would go as far as saying that being able to take this story and have the messages that it had and what it was trying to accomplish was really awesome. Yeah, I would again put it in that upper echelon for anime. I think that it fell off at certain points throughout the series. Here's the thing, it wasn't that it was specifically the material that made it fall off, but I think some of the training arc esque areas around, or at least the areas around the training arc. So before we got to when, spoiler alert, I guess, for anybody who hasn't caught up, but when we got to the point where Shigaraki obliterated that certain prefecture in town, um, that the everything before that was very lackluster, at least in how it felt. But when we got to that point, it felt great. When we had Bakugo get kidnapped way, way, way early on, which I don't even feel like I need to put a spoiler warning on because it's so far ago that that happened. The stuff around it, it wasn't very exciting. But then when we got to that part, it was a lot more exciting. So there were some, I think, highs and lows that did happen, but especially once we got to like the big giant push before, or as we were ushering into the end, I do think that the material got a lot better. I think that it was a lot more digestible. I think that it was something where it was very exciting. I was able to be excited. I love how all of the side stories were able to come together in a condensed and appropriate way that could make it just more. It just made it feel like it was a complete story in that way. I didn't have to worry about were there too many plot holes or anything like that. My Hero Academia was one of the series where they actually did kind of tackle a lot of these things. You got to learn about Shoto's family, and it wasn't just something where it was kept to being very secretive. You actually got to learn more, like to get a conclusion with that. You were able to get a conclusion with characters like Hawks. You were able to get a conclusion with even the anamorphic as characters. You were able to get a conclusion with that story. You know, when I think about Spinner, like the characters that look like Spinner, you were able to get that conclusion with their story. You were able to get somewhat of a conclusion with Spinner. It may not have been the conclusion that you would have wanted, but you were able to get a conclusion with that. And then obviously with the big bad, you were able to get a conclusion with Shigaraki and All for One, which is, again, there's oftentimes when mangaka and mangas and anime are trying to weave a story together, and comic books, I won't rule them out, they're trying to weave a story together. There is where they kind of get off track. They don't. Something gets left out. Something doesn't get explained. Something wasn't fleshed out enough to the point that you really will want it to, or to the point where your curiosity could be satisfied. And again, we didn't get those issues with My Hero Academia, and I do applaud it for that. I think that this is something that's happening as a problem with anime all around. One Punch Man is currently going through it, but animation wasn't always upper echelon or top tier. I don't. That's not something that I remember about the anime in the same way that I would something like Demon Slayer. But even at that, I don't think that it did a well enough job of like up of positioning itself in an upper echelon on an animation style overall. There was in the very beginning, yeah, like when we got a lot of the All Might stuff, that was beautiful, but it felt like everything after that, like that initial season going forward, I would not put the animation in a high regard. Which again, with it being an upper echelon show, I do think that that is a knock against it, but I don't think that it was a severe knock against it, because just like a lot of the anime that are coming out right now, they will save the budget towards a bigger moment, and that bigger moment will have an amazing splash. So I can't be mad at what direction animation studios are going in as a whole. I can't be mad at My Hero Academia for that. So I can't be mad at the animation studio's decisions as a whole to some extent, but again, I can't just place that blame solely there on one specific manga when that happens to fail or be less than satisfactory. The story, one of my fellow podcasting mates, he hates this idea of stories ending on a the power of friendship note. I do think that there's times where I don't like it. I don't think that this is a time where I don't like it. I think that this was a time where it was actually done really well. My Hero Academia, when it first started, we got to see this kid who just really wanted to have a heroic impact in the world. His idol being the like Superman of this narrative, and he wanted to just be something like him. And you know, at first you think that that's something that's very superficial, but as you start to see the interactions with this kid grow, you start to understand he's not just saying that for the Superman-esque elements of him that make him feel that way. He's really saying that from the overall impact that this person, this super heroic, larger than life person, has actually had on him. Um, and that was exactly what was tied back around when we got to the end of the series, is that he accomplished his goal. He set out to become a hero like that. It wasn't, he wanted to be not only a hero like that, but he wanted to have an impact like a hero like that. And I think that's where he achieved his goals. He absolutely crushed his goals. And it was amazing. And I think the way that they explained that and they tied that together, like one of the most spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't seen the finale yet, like the finale at this point, the end episode. um but I found it very profound how, which I didn't really, again, because of how the manga broke everything up, I was kind of over it, a little over it to realize this point. But in the anime, I found it very profound when we saw the grandmother who initially interacted with Shigaraki interacting with this new potential hero or potential villain, who was going through the same traumas that Shigaraki was going through at that time, and how instead of having an adverse reaction like she did with Shigaraki, she supported this child because ultimately that's what it was, or that's what the hero or villain was a child, and she offered some comfort and some confidence. She fought through her fears to actually support this child, and that is a reflection of the impact that Deku gave in the things that he did. She even said it in the scene. She said the way that he reached out, it changed everyone. Like all of the stuff in the last final fight was televised, so they were able to see him be more of a hero than anybody else that's come before him, and actually achieve the level of heroism that his predecessors were trying to achieve. And we know all of this because of the dialogue with the vestiges that were inside Deku. We know all of this from the confirmation from All Might himself, and we know this by the impact that we were able to see in characters such as the grandmother. And it wasn't just the grandmother. So I think that I really loved that point, the fact that what we saw with this kid in the very beginning and the idea and the notion that we wanted to see really get fleshed out to the very end with this kid Deku, the main character, but a kid, we were able to see it. And a lot of people were having, I remember when My Hero Academia was kind of like still in its earlier stages, and everybody had this speculation that we were going to see an adult Deku or a grown-up Deku kind of continue in this fight. And I now in hindsight, and especially in seeing everything concluded, I think it's amazing that they put the ending of his journey as an adult, as opposed to him being in the middle, and opposed to that being an aspect that we kind of had to see more fleshed out for Deku in the middle of everything that's going on. Sorry if I kind of jumbled my thoughts there, but I thought that that was really, I think now in hindsight, I'm glad that they didn't try to have him fight all for one, um, as an adult or as a teenager, as if the fight had to be something that were to be continued on or possibly given to another vestige, or for Deku to have to become another vestige for a long battle ahead. I think that that was, I think that it was perfect because it was like this kid got to live out his dream at that as a kid, and the impact of that is even more felt as you get to the ending of the series. It's like, yeah, like he really did become the hero. Even Bakugo had a moment where he commented somewhat on that, and like the kids, the younger kids would comment on that. You talk about an inspiration, like, is he per se the same inspiration that All Might could be? No. Presentation does make a difference. Presentation is something, and then not only presentation but power and influence. Like the things and the duration that All Might did what he did was legendary. I mean, it's like, it's legendary. It's like I always argue with people. I'm like, we'll never, I don't know, I could be wrong, and I likely am wrong, but as an example, we'll never see another LeBron James. Is something that I like to argue, and I don't argue that because I think that LeBron James is per se better than Michael Jordan or better than Kobe Bryant, the people that came before him. But the reason why I argue that is because people have got to see this greatness in the athletic world for over 20 years. And that is where like my argument comes from, that is that the impact that LeBron has, it's not really that we won't necessarily see another LeBron James, but it's the impact that LeBron has had on the athletic and the larger world at whole that will always have these ripples within society. because of that. And I think that's the same case here with All Might. Is like there's still kids that we see in at the end here, who are still uplifted by the image and the mantra of All Might, but he had that LeBron James run. Whereas with Deku didn't have that. Deku had he had a smaller run. And that's why I think them taking the time here at the end in hindsight to actually understand how Deku has such an impact despite him having such a run is illustrated so beautifully. Even by Deku himself, he's able to understand that he did, the next generations after him realize he did all of these things as a kid. Like he didn't do this as an adult. He did this as a kid, and he was able to see that. And you think about it, My Hero Academia, this is something that's around kids learning how to become heroes in society. The idea of him, he's like the greatest inspiration for that academic setting, because it's like, if I like, should I feel like I can't achieve this because I am a kid? Should I feel like I shouldn't be able to achieve this because my quirk is weak? Should I feel like I shouldn't be able to achieve this because I don't have a quirk at all? Like Deku tackles all of that. He tackles the whole shebang. So now whenever a kid has to come through this program, he should be like it he should be the poster child for it, not just like, even more so than All Might. He should be the poster child for it, because that is exactly what's going to be coming through the academy. And again, spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't seen the last episode. But he does end up becoming a teacher, which is like a lot of people, and including myself, I think the largest blame for this is not on the actual story that was told, but was more so on how the manga broke it up. It just turned so many people, including myself, off. But the idea of Deku having just a small flame of his powers and becoming a teacher is actually incredible. Like in hindsight, it is, looking at it from the anime's perspective and seeing how the anime was able to kind of break it down and explain it to me in a way where I could kind of not have that same frustration that I would have been walking into the chapter for the manga. It's the perfect role for Deku here at the end, because it's like, not only is he that symbol for any kid that's striving to become a great hero, but then you get to also take the person who we know is just a nerd. He just fans out and is a big nerd about quirks as a whole. You get to take that guy and make him a teacher. What better role would that guy have been but a teacher? Like, he is the person you want to be able to pull the most out of any kid. But then also, he is the hero becoming a teacher. That is what all of those, that is like, at least for the relationship between All Might and Deku, that is what was the case. That the hero, the true hero that everyone respects and everyone loves, really just took on a teaching role at the end. Even, and whether that teaching was actually as a teacher, which is what happened with All Might, or whether it was in the actions that All Might was doing towards the end of his flame, he did the exact same thing. The only thing that Deku did was he followed in the footsteps of those who came before him, like to a T. Not only to a T, but he surpassed them in the ways that he did that. And then we also get at the very end here that he also still could become a hero. Like All Might knew, like, you still got that juice. We gonna redefine how to be a hero. Who better to redefine? Like, we were mad because we just got this snapshot of he doesn't have his powers anymore. But who better to redefine what it means to be a hero in a quirk society than the guy who just redefined essentially how society should operate with heroes in the first place? Who better to have to be in the position to use the scientific advancements to show even more that anybody could be a hero? So now you got, like, you even think about when you take the spin-offs like vigilantes. Like, when you take that aspect, people in society who typically wouldn't be chosen to be heroes, right? When you can take a Deku, the greatest person in regards to inspiring a person at this point in this world, when you can have him be able to now say, hey, even if you don't have powers, if you still want to be a hero, path for you to be a hero. I'm not I'm gonna and so much so that I'm gonna show you again. I've already shown you if you're that person that has a doesn't have a quirk, or has a quirk that's weak, or has a quirk that's unstable. I've already shown you, or you're a kid and don't think that you could be a hero. I've already shown you those things, and I've shown you like the truest way to be a hero, the one where you don't have to ignore anybody, where you aren't ignoring anybody. I've already shown you that. Now let me show you how to do it if you are quirkless and with this different application of skill and power, etc. And having All Might kind of explain everything that I just kind of said was essentially the same thing that All Might explained at that same point that he was handing Deku over this briefcase that allowed for him to still continue being a hero. So it really did come around. Like, this story was actually really well done in regards to having something that you wanted to tell at the beginning and fleshing it fully out to a logical conclusion. My Hero Academia did that. It absolutely did do that. I really think though, like, not just I think My Hero Academia in terms of manga writing, the one thing I would say that My Hero Academia should be the example going forward, that if you have a story to tell and you get to the very end, you may have to change up the formula of the chapters and how the chapters exactly read. You maybe can't do 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 chapters that are 24 pages. You may have to have one large conclusion to really draw the point out that you're trying to make and ending your story. We shouldn't same like, because again, the same thing kind of happened. The same thing happened with Attack on Titan for sure. And you can argue the same thing or something similar kind of happened with Jujutsu Kaisen, where we get to the end, we get to the end and it's just people aren't satisfied with how it ends. But if those stories are fleshed out in the whole totality of what that end is supposed to be, maybe it's a 60-page chapter, maybe it's an 80-page chapter. If you have the success, I don't know, maybe, you know what, maybe the publishers don't want them to do that or will not allow for them to do that, and there's nothing they could do. Their hands are tied. That's probably the case, to be all honest. But if we didn't have that problem and people could see these narratives in one whole swoop, where it isn't broken up between, like, on a week by week basis or anything like that, I think that we'd be able to understand these things when it's at the time of being in manga form, as opposed to having to wait until it's in anime form. Which in Japan, they're making manga to help the sales of, or excuse me, they're making anime to help the sales of manga. So I think that the point should hit that same way for the manga as it does for the anime. I'm hoping now that this can be the same case with JJK for me. I didn't love the ending of that. It wasn't as bad as the ending of the manga in My Hero Academia for me. So I think that there is a chance that I'll have a lot more success with the ending there. But I do hope that this could be a learning lesson. Just be one of those chapters where it ends the same way it starts. If you start with a 60-page chapter, end with a 60-page chapter, if it really drives that narrative, the narrative points that you're trying to hit on down, which it's only fair to you because you've made us all fans. And it's only fair to the mangaka in this case, because the mangaka, well, it's not only fair to the mangaka, it's fair to everyone, I feel. But the mangaka in this case, we've trusted to tell us this story that we've grown attached to, that we found ourselves in, that we've had all of these different emotions and feelings and experiences in this massive journey with. That was off of the writing that this mangaka has been doing. So the ending is something where I don't want to not understand it or just kind of go into an avenue of frustration from it, because I only feel like I've gotten a snapshot of it and this is the ending. That's just my sentiments on it. For anybody who disagrees with me, please comment below. I would really love to hear more people's feedback on this. I know for a fact I wasn't alone with the the My Hero Academia MHA ending in the manga. But how did you feel about the anime's ending? Did the anime's ending have some level of redemption for you? Did it create some level of clarity for you? So let me know down in the you feel that way, or if that's something that you were able to get from it as well, or if you got got something totally different. Thank you guys so much for joining me on both or on either Crocos Corner or Squad Nero podcast for this review. Please remember to like, follow, subscribe, and hit that noti bell if you enjoyed this review and want to just be updated on any other of our content that we have coming out. We have a bunch of different things that we have for you guys, between podcasts to reviews, to first looks, just a bunch of different things. And then here on Crocos Corner as well, if you're interested in things like mental discussions and mental health discussions, or societal discussions at large, please be sure to lock in with shows like Mental Maintenance and more new ones to come in the near future. So thank you guys, and take care.